on my chip outs, man. I got this, yeah.
And now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to listen to Reece and Dan on the Ankle Pick Pod.
Okay, let's get into the nitty gritty, folks. UFC 284, February 11th.
Unless you're in Australia and it's already February 12th.
And it's at 5 p.m. Central. 6
Early
p.m.
prelims, 5 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. main card.
Let's get into it, boys. Okay. And let me tell you something. So I was telling Kobe, I was a little bit under the weather earlier this week. Have not gotten the amount of taping that one would like. But I do have a couple plays. Dan, however, will definitely be leading the charge on this one. Zubaira Tukhugov.
It's funny, though. I want to stop you there. I definitely will be leading the charge in terms of breakdowns, but I actually have 0 plays.
Weird. I'm going to talk him into a couple plays, though. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to talk him into a couple. Don't you worry about that. Dan's a gambler. So we'll start with Zubaira Tukhugov against Elvis Brenner. And Tukhugov's minus 580, Brenner plus 440. All these lines come from DraftKings. And it opened at Tukhugov minus 500. So it got up into the 600s for a little bit, but it definitely it settled in at 580 on DraftKings. So, Dan, is there anything to even add here as a breakdown? I mean, Brenner is coming in off a regional circuit, and Tukhugov is someone that we are familiar with. He's most recently beat Ricardo Ramos. But has other good performances with like a draw against Lerone Murphy. Now you look at Tukhugov name.
See, that's the funny thing that I want to bring up. You brought up other good performances and brought up a draw. Something about Zuba, who's a guy I've been a big fan of, a guy I've backed in the past multiple plays. He hasn't ever really impressed me now that I'm looking back at it. He's a guy that's got all the tools, high-level prospect, Team Khabib, can wrestle, although not quite at the same level as the rest of Team Khabib, but he has decent hands. He has a nasty left hook, but he has a bad habit of kind of getting in there and doing nothing, fighting at a really low pace, getting into close matchups with guys that he's far and away better than. And I think that should make you apprehensive about paying a minus 500 price on him. I do think he's going to look significantly better than Elvis Brenner here. I didn't watch a lot of tape on him, but looking at his record, he's got some rear naked chokes, some arm bars, a triangle. He's clearly got good jiu-jitsu. So I think that Zubaira is probably going to think twice about working in those takedowns. That is a necessary part of a Dagestani game plan. So, it's a pass for me. It's something I'm not comfortable in a parlay. And maybe come fight night, I'm sprinkling on this newcomer, someone that's completely unproven, just because Zuba hasn't done it for me. Yeah. And the reason I'm not on the underdog at this obscene price is because Zuba is just better than him.
I mean, so even just from a paper aspect, it's like I do know Tukhugov well, so it's easy for me to elaborate on this fight. I don't know Brenner. I didn't get a chance to tape Brenner, but Tukhugov's losing split decisions to Dawodu, who's got mauled against like a Rosa or something, but is talented. Draws against Murphy. But he's also pulled out of a million fights, and almost all of them are his fault, other than the Yoel Alvarez. And so,
including a ton of weight misses.
Botch weight.
I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't weigh in at 145 against this debuting Brazilian. It's just not something that he's consistently done. He's an unprofessional, incredibly skilled, incredibly unmotivated fighter. He's not a guy I want to play juice on.
And that's kind of the fact, is if you are doing a DFS and you want a long shot, I mean, you could take Brenner, hopefully score some points. If you're doing like a Rainmaker or like a roster where there's no salary cap, you could do Tukagov just because you're getting value on the line. But I think I'm with Danny. I probably won't place it because units are too hard to come by. And so I'd hate to piss a unit away on Brenner or half a unit or quarter unit. But there's no way this line is set properly. And the Russian juice is definitely being felt there. So we'll see. I don't know if this will even materialize. Blake Builder versus
that's going to be a pattern. Not so much with the Russian juice, but with the hometown juice as we move into this Shane Young fight that you were starting to introduce.
Yeah.
There's going to be a whole lot of hometown juice on this card.
And that's usually an opportunity to make money unless you're just fading the beast. So Blake Builder against Shane Young here. And Shane Young is minus 140. Blake Builder plus 120. Shane Young would be the hometown favorite Danny's referring to. Opened at minus 130, so it has come up to 140. But the 130 honestly had a little bit baked in to begin with. Like, I'm happy to see Shane Young. I don't know the last time we saw him. So 2021, March of 2021. He's someone who started off strong and then got finished by Ludovic Klein in Perth or in Australia. And that was in 2020, and fought Omar Morales, now on a big layoff. And Blake Builder, I think we've only seen him on the Contender Series just the once. It was a phenomenal performance. But I guess, Dan, the question for you is, were you able to get enough on Builder to feel confident as the dog here?
And to answer your question, no, I wasn't able to get enough. I won't be playing Shane Young. He's a guy who's really fun to watch. He goes out there, city kickboxing. He's got a lot of confidence in his striking, but he's not the most fun to bet on. He gets hit a ton. He's high volume, but he's getting high volume return. I mean, he's making Ludovic Klein look like he's freaking prime Cody Garbrandt, but I just haven't seen enough from Builder to want to take the underdog in this spot. It'd be more of a fade Shane Young than anything else. I've got Builder as a strong athlete. I've got him having a wrestling advantage, but he also seems hittable. And if Shane's going to have the higher volume and this Builder guy has no head movement, it's going to be a long night at the office. So I'm staying away from it. What I've seen, especially from this Builder side, is he seems to always have to dig deep in fights, which is a good sign that he's able to do it. But it's a red flag that he's in close or losing fights the majority of time. And so it's just not a situation where I'm confident on either guy. It's not a situation where I think either guy has a lot of potential to even be a fringe ranked kind of guy. I think that they kind of are who they are. We'll see Shane Young on all of these Izzy, Volk, Australia, Oceania region fights, fight nights, pay-per-view cards, but ultimately he's just not the guy.
Yeah, this is one that I'm going to look a little deeper into, but I lean Blake Builder. No bet here for me. Again, I didn't have time to tape this one. I do know both these gentlemen, but not as well as I'd like. Loma Lukiambumi versus Elise Reed. Loma's Dan's girl. I love Loma as well. The line here is Loma minus 315, Elise Reed plus 260, and Loma opened at 265. So it's come up a bit. I think the CLV or the closing line hurts you. You didn't get enough. I think placing her at 315 is a miss. I think 265 is palatable. She's undersized for 115, but I mean, her Muay Thai background and style, she should really not have a problem at all with Elise Reed. But
yeah, you're 100% right. I don't love the price tag, but I do love the matchup. Elise Reed is what she's been looking for in a fighter that poses zero takedown threat. Loma, like you mentioned, her high level Muay Thai is just going to be able to show off for as long as she wants to keep this fight standing. Ultimately, I do think that if Loma decides, she might end up on top for a couple minutes to steal around, maybe, or not steal around, but to cap off a round. But yeah, Elise Reed just doesn't have the grappling threat coming the other way that Loma has nearly faced, and Loma's done really well with it.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen Loma in recent fights utilize ground when she has to, but her Muay Thai is going to be leaps and bounds better than Elise Reed. And honestly, there's a shot that the finish comes, to be completely honest, with Loma. Nasty elbows, nasty knees. So she's just undersized, which hurts her. Jack Jenkins taking on Don Shainis. And the line here is Jack Jenkins minus 340. Don Shainis plus 280. This opened at minus 300 and plus 240. So it has come up a little bit still towards the favorite, Jack Jenkins. But what do you think, Dan? I mean, you got the hometown Australian, New Zealand prospect in Jack Jenkins against Don Shainis, who we haven't seen much of outside the loss.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to pay this price tag for Jack Jenkins coming off just the Contender Series. He hasn't proven himself against anyone high level, but from what I've seen, I've really enjoyed. He's a good prospect, very well rounded, great hands, and you might not have gotten that from his Contender Series fight, but great hands. Works behind his jab well. Showed off that he's got that complete skill set, that wrestling, that control, that ground and pound in that Contender Series fight. And for me, I do think that this is almost a setup fight. Don Shainis just isn't UFC level. You saw him just get run over by Sadiq Youssef without having to throw like any strikes. I do think that this is just a guy that they're bringing in for the hometown guy to get cruising over. So I've got Jack Jenkins as a parlay piece. I'm not exactly sure where he's going to be. Maybe in that Jack off parlay, Jack Della Maddalena and Jack Jenkins. But for now, I am pretty confident in the Jack Jenkins parlay piece.
Okay. I can get behind that. Jamie Malarkey, another hometown guy, against Francisco Prado. Jamie Malarkey minus 265. Prado plus 225 on the other side. Malarkey opened at minus 250, so not a ton of movement, very slight. I mean, like I know there's a similar fight to all these in the early ones that it's like I'm very familiar with Jamie Malarkey. We know what we're going to get out of Jamie Malarkey. I have no idea about this Francisco Prado other than he's undefeated, but he's always fought on the regional scene. He has got a ton of finishes, including both submission and striking. So, I mean, it seems like from an on-paper resume, Malarkey's going to have his hands full. But at the same time,
it's regional scene and it's low-level regional scene. I'm going to be honest here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of question marks, him being undefeated and not. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I'm not going to say the same things that I just said about Don Shainis because I don't know much about Francisco Prado. And ultimately, that's why I'm going to pass on this one.
Yeah.
But I do think a proven vet in Jamie Malarkey should be able to move past Francisco Prado. I'm just a little disappointed we don't have Nasrat Malarkey in this one.
The problem is for us is, I mean, we barely skated by on Michael Johnson versus Malarkey. And he's a guy who's lost to Varas Saim. Obviously, Brad Riddell is not a bad loss on paper. But,
or Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner's a fucking killer.
Oh, yeah. Jalen Turner's, top 10. But, yeah, I mean, you also have that issue where you don't know what you might get out of Malarkey. You might get the Varas Saim performance or the Michael Johnson where he just didn't get anything off, in which case this could be a good debut for the newcomer. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I think that,
right, but it's just not one where I'm comfortable paying the price tag.
The words out of my mouth. Yeah. Gleedson Rodriguez against Shannon Ross. And the line here is Gleedson Rodriguez minus 325, Shannon Ross plus 270. Was this a replacement fight, or was Gleedson always to fight? No, it looks like Gleedson was always to fight Shannon Ross. So Shannon Ross, what I know about Shannon Ross is just the fact that he lost on the Contender Series and lost on
a huge favorite.
And
he lost to the previously mentioned Vinicius Salvador and was a minus like 300 favorite.
Yeah, 250. So he lost, and then he had a win on the regional scene. Before that, he also lost in the regional scene. So he's coming in, probably a hometown, and then you have a guy who has a Contender Series win and then a CJ Vergara split loss, who I hold a lot of weight in CJ Vergara. I know a lot of people don't. I like CJ Vergara, but again, it's like, are you going to pay $3 and change on two guys that have very little out there.
I can't bring myself to back Cledson, even in a parlay. I mean, he is explosive. He is athletic. Good switch kicks, good spinning attacks. I mean, if you're able to stand right in front of him and don't move a lot. But he's never kept that up over 15 minutes. And yeah, Ross has just proven to be unreliable too. So for me, this one, it kind of boils down to almost the woman's science, almost the heavyweight pass. There's a lot going on at flyweight. This is way too big of a line, and it doesn't quite make sense. This could be one where there's a lot of value on Shannon Ross just because I don't quite see why Cladson's this heavy of a favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, like all these, if you made me pick a side, I'm picking probably Shannon Ross because of value, because where the line's at. If you made me pick a side, I probably would rather take a dart pull on Prado than laying the juice on Malarkey. Same with Shanus. I mean, this is a very tough bettable card so far, but I have a little bit more confidence as
I'll exclude the Shanus fight from that. I'd almost be comfortable just playing Jack Jenkins, but I'm not looking to do that. I just think Don Shanus is trash.
Yeah, I mean, you won't catch me arguing. Josh Kulibau against Malzik Bagdasaryan. And the line here is 110 each way. Dan had a slight lean he was kind of vibing with pre-show. Don't know if that's still there. It opened at Bagdasaryan.
It's still there.
Okay, so it opened at Bagdasaryan minus 130 and it's come back to that 110 each way. So you're actually getting some value here.
Definitely. And I completely agree with the opener. I've seen a whole lot on Twitter, public all over the Kulibau side. And it's making me a little bit more confident on Melsick. Obviously, he's got a long layoff, which is a little bit of a red flag. And he's the kind of fighter that I describe as not wanting to back a whole lot. He is the definition of one-dimensional. He's got a pretty extensive kickboxing background. He's working on rounding out the rest of his game, but he's a kickboxer. He's going to be much more complex and dynamic than Kulibau on the feet, but Kulibau's got some really scrappy power. Like he gets in your face. He doesn't move backwards. He rocks Jourdain. He rocks Sung Woo Choi. I don't really think he's elite by any means anywhere, especially in the striking. But he's kind of like that fighter's fighter that just doesn't go away, which is the only reason I'm worried about this. I think that if Kulibau is that narrative of, oh, I just found this power in my hands and I'm so confident in my striking now that it's starting to really work out for me, he's going to get touched up for 15 minutes by Melsick, who's just a lot more dynamic, a lot more technical. But if Kulibau turns this into a fight, not a kickboxing match, not a MMA match, a fight, this is Kulibau's to lose. He'll drag him into deep waters and probably be the one that's treading water at the end of the 15 minutes. But I don't have the confidence that Kulibau is going to come in with that game plan, and I don't have the confidence that his wrestling is elite enough to control this fight or control where this fight is fought. So I do think that there's value the more that this line moves to Kulibau's side. I do think that Melsick should be the favorite, but it's definitely not a one-sided fight. This will go back and forth. Kulibau will have big moments. I ultimately think Melsick will be better.
I also think you have a cap on how many units you can place here, not just because it's close, but because Bagdasaryan, like you said, one-dimensional, has the ability with the right game plan, even if the fighter might not be as talented, to get dragged out. So I think it's a lower risk play, all things considered. I think you're backing the better fighter. It's just a question of how much risk do you really want to take on, knowing that if Kulibau drags him down, it could be a difficult fight for Bagdasaryan to win. But no, I don't dislike the take there. I really don't. Last prelim, Tyson Pedro, another hometown guy against Modestas Bukauskas. Very happy to see Bukauskas back. You might recognize him from the really, really gruesome knee injury against Khalil Roundtree. It was a sidekick. He subsequently got cut after that. But about a year and a couple months later, he fought in Cage Warriors, got the dub, fought in Cage Warriors again, got the dub.
Got the strap.
That was for the strap?
That was for the strap.
Nice. So got the strap.
I agree with you completely. I just want to put some more emphasis on it. He is the definition of getting cut from the UFC and scratching and clawing, building your way back the fuck up, getting a regional championship and working your way back in, regardless of if it's short notice or not. Mad respect to
I also want to add that it was off a bad injury. I mean, the side kick buckled him. It was gross. And yeah, I mean, he did lose a couple in a row, split decision and a KO to Jimmy Crute, but it was really the injury that I think the UFC decided to part ways. So you have a guy who, although you'll see him in Cage Warriors, he is a very good striker, very young, very long, high fight IQ. He's definitely plays the part. On the other side,
but it is short notice for him.
It is short notice for him. But it's also short notice for Tyson Pedro, though, although he had a camp, obviously. But Pedro's minus 230. Bukauskas is plus 195. Pedro opened. That can't be right. It says minus 1,000, but that seems fucked.
It did. I can confirm that that's true.
Wow. It opened at minus 1,000, instantly got bet to 350 and then 270. And now it's slowly tailed back to 244. So here's the thing with Tyson Pedro. I've been following him for his entire career as well. He has a couple areas of like long hiatus where he just disappeared. 2018 all the way till 2022. And he has bad losses in that span too. So he beat up on Paul Craig, beat up on Khalil Roundtree, looked like the real deal, lost to Ilir Latifi, beat up on a guy named Safarov, then lost to OSP, who I think is an atrocious loss. Then he lost to Shogun Hua. This was 28 Shogun, but still an older version of Shogun. And since coming back, he's only beat Ike Villanueva and Harry Hunsucker. So this is a massive step up for Tyson Pedro, who is extremely, extremely talented, but has a lot of question marks. It's a layoff for me, but it's interesting how it's lined because you could either bet Tyson Pedro and look like a genius, but you also could bet Tyson Pedro and look like an idiot. And it's happened to me before. So the question is what would Bukauskas' path to victory be? And is the price of 95 worth it?
This is a fight where you got to remember the 3 L's. Pedro's going to start really fast. He's a good finisher in the first. Good submissions, good boxing, not the best wrestling. Modestus, slow starter. Lay off, look live.
Yeah.
3 L's.
Lay off, look live. Okay, I respect that. The other
Bukauskas is going to be a live play if he makes it out of the first. Tyson Pedro does not fare well past 5 minutes in any fight.
The other thing, too, is if you can get middle of the round, because if Tyson Pedro looks worse for the wear, live lines go down fast. So just kind of keep this one open. Also, I want to add strongly that I know people are going to be extremely tempted to add Tyson Pedro to their parlays. Do not. It is a very risky proposition. He is extremely talented, but he also has proven to lose a lot of fights that he should win. So
he's never won a fight that's gone past the first round. Ever.
And he's lost in the first round a lot. So just don't stylistically, you don't want to take the under because, like Dan said, Bukauskas starts slow, evades. But I think if you you're going to be tempted to put Tyson Pedro in your parlay. Don't do it. Please, for me, don't do it. You can even add us on Twitter and say you were wrong if Pedro wins, but don't do it. I'm trying to save you money here. All right, let's get on to the main card for UFC 284. Jimmy Crute, Alonzo Menifield. The line here is Jimmy Crute -2. It was 2 and change last time I checked. Jimmy Crute -190. Alonzo Menifield plus 160. It did open at Crute -230 and has come back a wee bit. I'm actually really...
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to hear your take here because you have a mixed martial artist with a higher fight IQ in Jimmy Crute. I believe so. I think he's more talented. But
I agree.
But
more technically sound, more well-rounded, better cardio.
He got Peruvian necktied by Misha Serkinov, and I'll never forget that. That's still in my mind.
No, it's 100%.
He's also coming off a layoff, about a year and a half.
Coming off a year and a half layoff where he had a nasty knee injury, or he had the nasty knee injury versus Anthony Smith, and then it looked like it got re-torn against Jamal Hill. Two guys that are definitely a whole skill level above, multiple skill levels above Alonzo Menifield. So it's not worth comparing there. But Crute, being the more well-rounded, more technically sound guy, has more paths to victory if he wins, or to win, has just not been the same Jimmy the Brute Crute that he used to be. When he was coming off Contender Series and submitting Paul Craig, this was a whole different guy.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, Alonzo is as unreliable as it gets. He seems like he's got all the athleticism, all the power, zero gas tank, zero game plan. And then he's leaving a world-renowned, one of the top-end gyms in Fortis MMA to go train with Pat Barry. It's really confusing for me.
Yeah, I wish I could clarify for you, but I mean, I've backed Menifield in the past. It's worked out well. It's worked out horribly. The time that I remember it working out horribly was against OSP. That was horrible. But against Fabio Charant, Misha Serkinov, it worked out well. But
even if you look at all those names, Misha Serkinov, Askar Mozarov, Ed Herman, Fabio Charant, are any of them in the UFC anymore?
No.
Those are the only wins he has.
None of those four names have a UFC win since 2019.
Yeah, Serkinov, who's lost 5 times since. And he's losing to middle, lower barrel, Devin Clark, OSP, William Knight. I mean, I think that you're getting a lot of value on Jimmy Crute here as a buy low on Jimmy Crute, sell high on Alonzo Menifield. The thing that puzzles me and why I wanted Dan's take so bad is I don't know why this line is going in this direction. I don't know why it's coming from 230 to 190.
Alonzo has had some good takedown defense to the point where if Jimmy can't land takedowns, this could get greasy. But ultimately at 205, I just want nothing to do with this fight. Jimmy could win the whole thing and get nuked.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that even on a submission prowess, it would be like a warm knife through butter for Jimmy.
I don't know. Alonzo's big and strong.
Yeah, he is. I don't know. I lean Jimmy Crute here, but I don't want to pay 2 units to win 1. So we'll see. This would be a night of full send if I do take it. But I don't know. I'm not, as far as talent goes, if you pulled out record and pulled out everything, you looked at just sheer talent, Jimmy Crute is significantly more talented.
If you book this fight at any other weight class or any lower weight class,
right,
we're betting Crute.
But just because of the size, power of Menifield, there's just too much risk involved for a 190 favorite.
And speaking of a lot of size, a lot of power, and ultimately not a lot of skill.
Yep.
We've got Justin Tafa, Parker Porter next.
Yep.
This is your classic sloppy heavyweight.
So
if
Tafa's
I could use that word.
Tafa's minus 120, Porter plus 100. Tafa opened at minus 115. It's teeter-tottered that line of even. I mean, the truth is, the honest truth is, it's Tafa is power reliant, beats Terry Hunsucker.
He's your classic archetype of the Australian, New Zealand heavyweight, the Walmart Mark Hunt tied to Ivasa. He's overweight, but carries an absolute cannon with an overhand.
But
great calf kicks, honestly. That's been a staple of these oceanic heavyweights.
You have to look at it.
Like you said, it's KO or bust.
You have to look at it this way. First off, I just clicked on Jorgen De Castro, and he's fighting in PFL next year, so that's cool. But he lost to Jorgen De Castro, beat on Juan Adams, who's both those guys are no longer in the UFC. Lost to Carlos Felipe, got destroyed by Jared Vanderaa, like beat up on by Jared Vanderaa, and then beat Harry Hunsucker. So you have a guy who, outside of the swinging hooks, is kind of fucked. But at the
I can confidently tell you that Parker Porter is technically better, the same way he was technically better than Baudot and Sherman and Parisian. That's not saying much, but he is technically better. He's going to have more volume. He's just not as dangerous. And at heavyweight, similarly to what we were just saying about Croup Manyfield, Parker Porter could win the entire fight and then just get nuked at any moment. It takes one shot to land. I want nothing to do with it. And I have no confidence that his skill level is going to even set them apart until he gets nuked.
Yeah. 37-2. I mean, so here's a question for you. Thoughts on over 2.5?
See, I looked at it, and you know me, I love my heavyweight overs.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
The over 1.5 is minus money. I don't like over 2.5 for heavyweights.
Yeah, over 1.5 is not enough. It's probably going to hit, but I'm not trying to sweat that out.
At minus money, not for me, not at heavyweights. Give me that heavyweight plus money, 7-minute fight. I'm in.
I kind of like Parker Porter at plus 100 now that we talk about it.
He's better. He's completely better. You can win this fight for 49 or for 14 minutes and 59 seconds, but that nuke could come.
Let's put it this way. If this wasn't in Australia, I believe not only is Justin Tafa not on this card, but he's not in the UFC. And I think they're literally just going to use him here and then probably cut him irregardless.
You want me to go one step further?
Sure.
If they didn't book Junior Tafa, Justin Tafa wouldn't be on this card, and Junior Tafa dropped out. And this is almost like, oh, what the fuck did we do? We got the other brother?
I'm not debating that either. I think that's equally as realistic. It could be one of those situations where it's like, oh, we'll keep the slow brother along as well. I mean, it's just really interesting because, like you said, you will get the better fighter at technically plus 100. But, does it even matter? Probably not. Maybe just clench your butt cheeks and pray. All right, the fight that
I'll say that long term, you have the right bet, you'll win money. There's a reason why I personally stay away from, and it's not just favorites. I stay away from heavyweight, flyweight, and women's any division because there's just so much.
No, because you're sexist. Let's break this down. You're sexist. Let's break it down. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm sexist against the biggest and smallest men in the world.
And women. Okay, so I'm kidding. Danny's very, very about equality. It's me that you have to worry about.
I'm moneyist. I'm concerned about my money betting on women's favorites.
I mean, we've proven the system works, so it's not up to be delegated. Okay, so here's so Kobe went away, was doing whatever he was doing, and comes back for this fight, obviously. Jack Della Maddalena against Randy Rude Boy Brown. Jack Della Maddalena minus 305. Randy Brown plus 255. I want to give a shout out to someone on Twitter. I don't remember their name, so I apologize. But he pointed out that DraftKings had a bet that was this fight by sub only. So if it was a decision or KO TKO, it would void. And Randy Brown was plus 160. DraftKings quickly took that off the board almost immediately. I saw the post about 2 hours, and 2 hours later I went to go do it, and it was gone. So they moved quick, but great line for whoever that was. Keep spotting that shit. That's awesome for the community. Way to post it. But that kind of gets into what this fight's all about. Randy Brown, very, very long, very, very lanky.
Great range.
Great range.
Great striking at range.
I wouldn't say that he is like a god on the mat, but has very good submission skills, had a nice one-arm rear naked choke against Oliveira for whatever's that worth, Alex Oliveira. That was up for submission of the year that year. But
I thought that, not to take away from it, I thought that was more just Cowboy Oliveira quitting to go be with his 30 kids. But
yeah, I mean, I would never say that isn't what happened, because it kind of is what happened. But it's like you have a guy here who has skill sets, right? I mean, he's very, very long, very, very lanky, decent striking, good submissions, but like losing to Nico Price via hammer fist from the bottom. And I remember that fight vividly because it was the second time Nico Price did it. He did it to James Vick, which obviously glass chin, then did it to Randy Brown. So this is a huge, huge, huge step up for Randy Brown. But to be fair to everybody else,
I think it's a huge, huge, huge step up for Jack Della Maddalena.
That's what I was about to say. For respect to everybody else, it's a huge step up for Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, Ange Lusa has phenomenal striking, but is one-dimensional. Pete Rodriguez washed that away. Ramazan Ameev is actually a good win. I mean, that was a very good liver punch.
Yeah, it's an aging
Ameev
Ramazan.
folded. I know, but he got Ameev
like 35.
folded. And then, yeah, Danny Roberts, we saw what Michel Pereira did to him. You can style on him. So,
but you're right. JDM has been extremely impressive everywhere. There's a reason why he's this big favorite.
Right.
But Randy Brown is not a walkover. He shut down multiple prospects, albeit those are guys like Mickey Gall. But he's shown he's a legit fringe ranked welterweight and will constantly be a legit fringe ranked welterweight. Maybe that gatekeeper kind of guy. I've been so impressed by JDM. The hands, the combos, the speed, the volume, the killer instinct, the toughness. For me, he's got literally every mark of a future title contender. I see him getting in Randy Brown's face, landing combos, hurting him bad. I don't see Randy Brown being effective from range or really getting this to the mat here. And I know that that's a hot take because of how skilled he is. And I understand that this is the first big test for JDM. I just don't see Randy Brown being able to give him the better lesson that he intends to do.
Yeah, so you're not wrong with a lot of what you said. Here's the line that I like in this. And it's my first leg of a parlay that I'm building. And it's these next three fights in a row. But here's what it comes down to. This is a huge step up for Della Maddalena. But these are opportunities in the UFC especially, that when you see a guy that is well-liked, well-received, and the UFC, very talented, UFC likes him, they will continue to use their matchup to cherry pick. I think they think this is a very winnable fight for Della Maddalena. All respect to Randy Brown, but I think that this is kind of like that ceiling up where he's just not quite there.
I mean, Randy Brown just went punch for punch with Trinaldo like 3 months ago.
Right.
It's not the same level as Jack Della Maddalena at 25 years old.
And if you're getting hammer fisted from the bottom by Nico Price, I feel like these cinder blocks that Della Maddalena is throwing your way is going to be brutal. And so the first leg of my parlay that I actually like a lot and have already placed is Della Maddalena to win by KO, TKO, DQ minus 115. That's the first leg. I think that you can't lay the 300 on Della Maddalena outside of, you could do it in a parlay. I wouldn't do it straight. I think you'll be sweating the whole way. Or at least at first.
So just to pause you there, this is one where I did climb on after the set the spread. I grabbed 300 for 3 units right after we did that set the spread. So I'm on it for the sweat.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I mean, Della Maddalena is going to win. I mean, this would be a jaw-dropping upset. But if it hits the mat, that's a realm we haven't seen from Della Maddalena. And in his early career, he did get subbed. And so Randy Brown is going to be
in that same vein, we saw him perform incredibly well defending the subs against guys like against Ramzan Ameev and Angelusa. Angelusa, I think, had him in a pretty tight arm triangle. Or maybe it was a Darce, some kind of choke where Della Maddalena was just cerebral about staying calm and getting out of it.
That's kind of the point. Is if Ange Lusa can secure something like that and even get close, you would have to think that Randy Brown also has the capabilities of securing something like that and getting close. I mean, that's how I look at it. But Yeah, I mean, I think Della Maddalena is a great pick. I think Della Maddalena's style's on him. I took him by TKO, KO, DQ. It felt fishy, but 115 is a price I'm willing to pay that he closes this, puts on a show in front of the home crowd. He's a guy who hunts finishes. And when I saw him against Danny Roberts, especially, he is accurate. I mean, his precision is insane.
And I'm going to complete my jack-off parlay. If you go to Bet Online right now and parlay Jack Jenkins and Jack Della Maddalena, minus 300, minus 335, that's a minus 137 bet, which is palatable for me.
Book it. And I'll tail him in on that. I like Jack Della Maddalena. Don't know enough about Jack Jenkins, but in Danny, I trust. Co-main event, interim featherweight championship, Josh Emmett versus Yair Rodriguez. Yair Rodriguez is currently sitting at minus 180. Josh Emmett plus 155. It opened, as Danny and I were talking about, as Yair minus 160, it looks like. And then went down. Yeah, 160, went down a little bit, and then spiked up to 180s. So I have a confession to start. I have a bet placed. The bet is on Yair Rodriguez. I have the worst line you could possibly have. I locked in minus 190. I looked on all my books. It was all minus 190 at the time. I didn't want to lose a one handle in front of it. So I placed to win 2 units at minus 190. And it's back to 180 now. So I like it even more at 180. I'm not going to add more, but here's my thought on this. And I've thought about it a lot. I've had a lot of time while I was sick. I scored the fight for Calvin Kattar, as did most. You have a guy that is losing a couple years out to Jeremy Stephens, a guy who was losing.
I scored it for Calvin Kattar when I was in the arena. Upon rewatch, I gave the first 3 to Emmett in the last 2 Kattar.
I haven't fully
and I don't want to derail your whole thing, but that's one thing I want people to consider is that the power that Josh Emmett brings makes a lot of really skilled, really dangerous people gun shy, including Calvin Kattar for those first 3 rounds.
But here's the big take, and here's the big takeaway. This Josh Emmett is a 145-pound Derek Lewis, in my opinion. I mean, it's an interim belt that, in my opinion, he probably shouldn't be fighting for. I think Max Holloway's better than both these guys. And you have a guy who lost every single second to Michael Johnson in 2019 before landing a bomb. Lost to Jeremy Stephens, barely edging out Calvin Kattar. Yair Rodriguez stylistically will strike with Josh Emmett, and it'll be toe-to-toe. Yair Rodriguez has...
It's a different striking style, though. There are some intricacies to this matchup, is all I'm trying to say. I agree with you ultimately. I'm leaning the Yair side. I wish I had grabbed that 140 that we saw. It's looking less palatable at 200, 190. And I do agree with you. Ridiculously skilled striker, especially at kicking range. One of the most dangerous guys in the world. Won the 4th and 5th against Holloway. So you know he's got 5 rounds of cardio. You know he's worked out that pace. He's much more dynamic on the feet, much more variety. I just don't want people to look past Josh Emmett and think, I scored it for Kattar. He shouldn't be here. Why is there a 1 in front of this? Because Josh Emmett has worked his way up.
Okay.
He you said, you called him the Derek Lewis of 145.
And I think that was actually being generous. Here's the deal.
He's got a knockdown in every single fight he's ever had at the UFC level.
He's 37 years old. He trains out of Team Alpha Male. His best level of competition was a Calvin Kattar split decision. He was losing every second to Michael Johnson. He lost to Jeremy Stephens. His only good wins were Ricardo Lamos, where Ricardo was ranked 3, never should have been. Shane Burgos.
I've got beating Burgos and Ige as good wins, man.
I mean, but that's middle.
I got beating Burgos, Ige, and Kattar as good wins. It doesn't prepare you, and you haven't faced a Yair level. I'm not arguing that Josh Emmett should be a favorite here. I'm arguing that.
But I'm arguing that I don't even think Josh Emmett should be in this interim situation.
I don't
Max
disagree because I don't
think
have
Max
him as a
Holloway's
top
better.
4. I don't have him as a top 4 or 5 flat
Neither.
or featherweight. Sorry. But
Neither.
what I will say is that he deserves the respect and the dangerousness that he brings to that octagon every time he steps in it. Like I just said about Kattar, who's a tough motherfucker, who's a guy that against Giga, one of the most dangerous strikers and kickboxers, and in terms of accuracy and shot selection, dangerous. Calvin Kattar's not gun shy. Calvin Kattar's gun shy for 15 whole minutes because of the power that Josh Emmett has coming his way. He feels it one time in Austin, and all of a sudden, for 15 minutes, he can't get his timing down. That's all I'm trying to say. There's a guy in Calvin Kattar that he's a balls to the wall fast
but you're
starter.
Talking about, like you said, he's got a knockdown in every fight. He also is fighting a guy who's never been finished. He's also fighting a guy at range. He's also fighting a 7-year younger, significantly faster, stylistic nightmare. And I think that when you're looking to bet UFC, there's always the shot that this guy is going to be a one-punch wonder. And that's the Derek Lewis treatment. And it's the same reason why I took a bath when I bet Curtis Blades against Derek Lewis. It happens. However, I do not see a scenario where in a 5-round war, I do not see Josh Emmett edging out Yair Rodriguez. That's all. I think he could land a one-shot.
And I guess that's I guess the only place that we're disagreeing, because I do think Yair's the side. I do think Yair's the better striker, the more possibilities to win. There's
faster.
Something about making a guy in Calvin Kattar not want to throw, not want to engage until he figures you out. That is a little concerning. And there's a reason why this line isn't steaming.
So I think you're
the
looking
same way that we're talking about this like he should be minus 250. And there's a reason why it hasn't crossed that too.
Where do you line Josh Emmett? Or I mean, not Yair Rodriguez versus Calvin Kattar? Because Josh Emmett was plus 200 against Calvin Kattar in a razor bite fight, or like a razor close fight. I think Yair Rodriguez is favored to Calvin Kattar.
Totally. After that,
and so
Calvin Kattar was coming off of beating Giga, and coming off of beating Giga, I think that Calvin Kattar's a favorite over Yair. That may be a little bit of a hot take.
No, I mean, it's just like you look at the Max Holloway performance out of Calvin Kattar. You look at the Max Holloway performance against Yair Rodriguez, and there's clear levels.
Night and day.
And look, Josh Emmett has crazy power, but you have to, at a certain point, go, he's 37 years old. He trains at a gym that is known for losing. He's 37 years old. He trains at Team Alpha Male. I don't know where Team Alpha Male is getting his sparring partners. He doesn't wrestle. He's looking to strike against a younger, faster, more technical striker.
He is the better wrestler. I'm not, and please.
No, I'm not saying Yair's a better wrestler.
I'm not saying he's going to wrestle for 5 rounds.
Yeah,
he's just
not.
But I could see a couple close rounds where in the last 30 seconds, Josh Emmett gets a takedown, and all of a sudden that's not a close round anymore. That's a Josh Emmett round.
I think that 140 is extremely palatable, and I know we missed it, but
agreed.
I think
I'm having a lot of trouble as this gets closer to the 2, is all I'm trying to say. I love it at that 165, 175. I'm having a lot of trouble as it crescendos over that 185.
I bid it at 190, and I was very scared it was going to get into the 200s, 215s, and I couldn't take it. I really wanted action on this fight. In hindsight, I should have done half and waited. But I think that if you're listening to this, you're looking for a bet, you're looking at something that you are getting the better side of, I think that 180 for Yair Rodriguez in a fight that's kind of tailored for him to win is a good bet. I think that this stylistically is a great matchup. I think that Max Holloway beats both of them, so it doesn't really matter. But I
agree with you completely. All I'm trying to say is that there's something stinky about it, and I haven't figured it out exactly what it is. But I can smell the stink.
You're scared of that one shot. All right,
I can smell the stink.
Let's finish this off because Dan's farting in his own fucking mouth. All right, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski for the 155-pound strap, 23-1 versus 25-1. Islam Makhachev's minus 380. Alexander Volkanovski plus 310. It opened at Islam Makhachev minus 490 and has come down a good margin. But it says a lot about where people think of Islam Makhachev, because obviously this isn't a knock on Volkanovski. Volkanovski is moving up to 55, though. So for a guy who has a small frame for 45, obviously he's going to look even more undersized at 55. But Danny,
and that's ultimately where my whole take has come from. I'm sitting here absolutely kicking myself. I want to be all over Volk. I want to be multiple units on this big-ass underdog in Volk, being that he is the king of game planning, the king of mid-fight adjustments. And as much as like people like to say, oh, it's UFC isn't that kind of coaching sport. It's not you have to be the better fighter on that night. Game plan can make a lot of guys that are worse than other guys look a lot better in that octagon. Mm-hmm. And it's really crazy how smart of a fighter Volkanovski is. It really is just that size for me.
Yeah. I mean, here's my take on the matter. And I don't know if you're going to dog me or not, but I look at what they give me. Okay. I that's all I have to use. And I watched a Chad Mendes, granted in 2018, take Volkanovski down like a warm knife through butter, control his back for a little bit. I watched Brian Ortega, albeit a very talented fighter.
Multiple takedowns.
Multiple takedowns, also a guillotine within a second.
He's not a wrestler either.
So my fear is no matter how much you train, when you have a bigger framed Dagestani wrestler and you're getting not backpacked, but you're getting your back taken by Chad Mendes, I don't know how much improvement you can possibly make to where you're getting to a point where you can defend a takedown against Islam.
And
the other thing,
I'll go ahead and say I don't think he's as concerned about defending every takedown as people think. He's been working specifically with Craig Jones about get-ups. I think that he's kind of decided I'm going to be on my back a couple times this fight. As long as I can get up, then I'll have a chance. And ultimately, he is a much more dynamic striker if he's able to get up. It's huge if.
Well, the next question is, you have a guy, even if he gets up, what's stopping Islam from just dragging him back down over and over again?
So that's I agree with that. Ultimately, you look at Islam, obviously he's Khabib's protege, but he's bigger and stronger than Khabib ever was. Mm-hmm. Incredible wrestling, incredible top pressure, but let's ignore that for a second. He's so defensively sound on the feet, and it's not even like, I'm not talking about his striking, I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about his shell. I'm talking about his footwork, talking about his timing on the takedowns. There's been a stat that's been running around a lot that Volk absorbed more significant strikes in one fight versus Holloway than Islam has had his entire career. And as much as that is like, yeah, if Islam was fighting a guy with the volume of Holloway for even twice, it'd be different. But there's a lot to be said that Islam's been in the UFC for a decade. He's almost got double-digit fights.
Yeah.
And he's been hit like less than once a minute of fight time.
Right.
That level of defensive awareness is ridiculous.
Here's the thing. Islam's gotten knocked out in the UFC. Volk has.
I mean, but that's a one shot. Here, can I cover that real quick?
Please.
Islam, in that defensive, what I've been talking about, what I was just slagging him off or whatever, it's less so that he's unable to get touched, and it's more so that he's able to control where the fight takes place for 95% of the time that he's in the octagon every time. And I do think that as good as Volk is and as great of a striker, as great as he is at working in those calf kicks and slowing down his opponent, it's going to be really tough to get Islam moving backwards for 25 minutes.
The real problem for me is I've seen, I know we all have, those meme clips of Islam attempting to strike. And it is laughably terrible. I mean, horrible. So my question is, can you lay minus 380 if we don't technically know if Volk can like, if this strikes for even a minute around, I think Islam gets TKO'd. If it strikes for 1 minute,
I'm just
around,
not sure of that. Has Volk been that one hitter quitter guy ever though?
No, but Islam's a really bad striker. I mean, as bad as he's bad,
and he knows it. He doesn't spend a lot of time striking.
And so that's the thing. Here's my question to you, and this is the
Volk doesn't
question.
have that Derek Lewis uppercut.
Does Islam take Volk down?
It's a guarantee. I think that if you're lying, it's a minus 800.
So I think arguing's moot, because basically, if Volk stuffs the takedowns, I think Islam loses almost instantly. But if Volk doesn't, it's going to be a long night, and I think it's
going to be so tough for him, man. And I know that there's a lot of narratives with this fight. Pound for pound, number 1 versus number 2, hometown, like former 250 or former heavyweight in Volk, whatever. The size is going to be really, really important here. If we look back, guy we just spent a ton of time talking about, Max Holloway. What you just said is in the conversation for the featherweight GOAT.
Mm.
One of my favorite fights of all time is watching him versus Dustin Poirier, a guy who I wouldn't say in any year I've been a fan has been the most talented lightweight alive. Definitely not. Max had so much trouble going up to 155 because it's really damn tough. It doesn't matter how world-class you are. You look at Izzy, someone we all thought, maybe not you, Reece, but someone a lot of people thought was an absolute generational talent, world-class. You move up a weight class, it's a different sport. It's a different strategy. Yeah, these guys, they land one takedown, and it is different trying to get them off of you.
The big difference, though, is like Izzy walked around at 195. Like, he weighed in at like 197. Volk has been 250 before. I mean, I've seen him at 220. I mean,
But you look at the frame. That's a whole different conversation. He's never been a fighter that's been in any form of competitive shape at 200. He's fought at a ton of different weight classes. But I would say that, and maybe this is a crazy take because of it. And maybe this is a crazy take because of what you just said. Volkanovski's history having a ton of muscle and a ton of weight. I think Izzy was better set to move up than I think Volk is. Volk's a guy that makes 145ers look big, and Islam's a guy that makes 155ers look small. Islam's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he was a favorite in the super fight versus Kamaru or versus Leon. Volk is a guy who has as much prestige and as much built up credit as you can possibly have at 145 and is still a massive, massive dog. And I think that there's just a reason. And I don't think that it's as separate as far. I don't think the fight's going to play out where Islam's going to cover his price. Volk is a tough animal. Like I said, mid-fight, you aren't going to find a guy that adjusts between round 1 and round 2 or round 2 and round 5 better than Volk does. He's going to be better or have a better answer for what you're bringing to him as the fight goes on, just because he's going to figure you out. I don't know that you can solve the domination that Islam's going to bring when you're a natural 145. Well, I'm not trying to say that Islam's unbeatable. I'm trying to say that
this is what brings
size.
Well, so this is what brings my question to you. Not question, but here's the end of my parlay. It's Jack Della Maddalena to win by KO, TKO, DQ minus 115. Yair Rodriguez minus 180. And Islam Makhachev to win by finish. KO, TKO,
I think that what I was telling Kobe right before we started recording, and I haven't gotten into the whole method for Islam. I really haven't. This could be the best bet of all time. But I think that you'd have a great opportunity to hedge and make a lot of money if it's just Islam money line and you're taking Volk as that head spot going into the main event. And all of a sudden you get to watch pound for pound number 1 versus number 2 as a fan with predetermined positive money on them. Like, I don't know. If I'm approaching this fight, I might throw Islam as the last leg of a couple parlays because I think that he will win. And I think that it won't be super close.
It also doesn't even hurt Volk's legacy at all. I mean, this is a fight that he's not supposed to win. Yeah. He's moving up, and outside of Nunes to a fake division and Daniel Cormier going 1-2 against Stipe, how many times has people? What's up?
BJ Penn
and McGregor, I think too. But still, moving
up.
McGregor
went up to fight fucking Cowboy at 170. I guess going up to 155 is really impressive. It's the same jump we're talking about, 145, 155.
Yeah.
And in that
Eddie Alvarez is different.
Volk gets this done.
Yeah.
There will be no one more happy than me watching that guy become a double champ. He's one of the most likable people in the sport. His daughter's fucking awesome. I mean, like, his cooking with Volk is as likable as it gets. He is. I know I said this like 2 years ago about Izzy. He's the definition of a likable champion, of a face for this sport. He's just an awesome guy.
So I know Dan and I really went into the weeds on Yair Rodriguez-Emmett and Islam Volk, but that is what you are here for, is the main juice. Hopefully we got all the squeeze. Kobe, is there anything to add? We're closing the books on UFC 284 for our predictions, but is there anything, any housekeeping or anything we need to add before we poha off this?
We haven't quite hit 2 hours yet, so I was thinking we do like 4 or 5 more set the spreads.
I was about to ask you if it was as long as I thought, and apparently it is.
It's a big fight, so let's close it up with some pohas. We'll catch y'all next week.
Poha.